Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to be continuing our review around 2048 and we're going to be discussing 4 new chapters, again similarly to the last episode, and 3 of them again are going to be interlinked. Today's episode is going to revolve around Zionism, the difference between Anti-Zionism, Anti-Judaism and Anti-Semitism. Religious groups shouldn't have monopoly over religion, and who does this land belong to? To start off with a word about Zionism. Now, all of you know what the current definition of Zionism means. It's a nationalist movement established in the 19th century by Theodor Herzl, and it's the nationalist movement that established modern-day Israel. Now, note that the roots of Zionism had no direct link with Judaism. They were originally Christian movements, but then Theodor Herzl moved the connection towards Judaism, and it evolved to become a Jewish nationalist movement. Now, it's very easy to obviously trigger everything against Zionism as a movement because, as we all know, it has done most of the atrocities that we know in the land of Palestine, and the Zionist belief has led to many tragedies in the 20th century and up until now. However, when we talk about Israel nowadays, people of various beliefs and religions live in Israel nowadays, and even when you talk about the definition of Zionism, one might have a view about Zionism, the other person might have a different opinion and view about Zionism. And there are even calls to review how Zionism is defined in Israel and what it should and shouldn't really include. From my perspective, the way I see it is, it really boils down to your definition of the thing and what you do in practice. So you can similarly attribute it to Islamism, for example. You might have a very fundamentalist Islamist movement, and you might have a normal political Islamist movement that is active in day-to-day politics in many countries across the world. And I would view Zionism in a very similar way, not by what it has done and what we traditionally know about Zionism, but rather how people are defining or redefining the meaning of Zionism. So, if your definition of Zionism includes the belief that you would love to live in Israel and this is the national home for Jews and you love the land, well, fine, no problem. However, if your belief in Zionism includes the military oppression of other people by any means necessary to control the land and your superiority over the land, and that the land only belongs to you and to no one else, and that you're going to control it by any means necessary, then we're going to have a different debate and you're going to have a much more difficult argument to win when defending Zionism. Which leads us to the next one. Anti-Zionism versus Anti-Judaism versus Anti-Semitism. Now, there is a very desperate attempt to link Anti-Zionism with Anti-Semitism, and it's a very corrupt attempt, in all honesty. If you look at the IHRA definition of Anti-Semitism, it has about 11 paragraphs. 7 of them relate to Israel. What does Anti-Semitism and hating Jews have to do with Israel as a state? Someone explain to me. And how can you be an anti-Semite if you criticize Israel, even if you are Jew? Which leads us to anti-Semitism itself. Now, the term is mostly referred to the hatred of Judaism, the hatred of Jewish people. Whereas Semite people include non-Jewish people like myself. I'm a Semite. I'm a native of the area of Sham, which is Shem, the area of Levant. So being an anti-Semite would include me, a non-Jewish person. And if you want to be accurate about the direct hatred for Jews, you would have to say anti-Jewish. And the link between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism is not a genuine link. At the end of the day, if you oppose a political movement that strives to do something, that doesn't mean you have anything wrong with the religion. However, in my opinion, as I described previously, you would need to understand and gain an understanding about the definition of Zionism, because people view it differently in different parts of the world. Which leads us to political groups shouldn't have monopoly over religion. Now, it might be obvious, because we live in Europe and you have mostly secular states, but it isn't the case when you talk about Zionism. Zionism has always been trying to have full monopoly over Judaism, and you can tell by the attempts of the IHRA to constantly link the criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism so that people can stop criticizing Israel, so that Israel can go ahead and do whatever it wants, and so that every word that you say against Israel will be easily called anti-Semitism, and you will be a bigot, and you will be a racist, and you won't be able to say a thing, which doesn't make sense. Because as I referred to in my previous videos, some of my previous videos, we already have people who are Jews, who criticize Israel, who are harsh critics of Israel, and they're Jews and they're Israeli. So you can't tell me that this person is anti-Semite because he criticized Israel, or that they're somehow linked. Zionism is political, Judaism is religious. There's a difference between the two, and they cannot be interlinked. And the last chapter in this episode that I will be talking about is the biblical reference in the Old Testament, "To your offsprings I will give this land." Now, the Jewish people and obviously some of the Christians believe that God said this to Abraham. In Genesis 12:7, the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." Now, I have a couple of comments on this. Number one, it's obviously limited to the belief of the people who follow Judaism and Christianity, and no one else is really bound by it because it's a belief. Then you have a set of parameters that one kind of needs to pass before establishing the full right to this land. And number one, if God indeed promised this land to Abraham and Abraham's descendants, well, I'm Abraham's descendant by religion, if you want to take it that way. Arabs and Muslims are descendants of Abraham. So, according to that, just that, I'm also entitled to the land. Then, if you want to take it from different perspectives, you would need to have and prove direct relation to Abraham. Secondly, if God did actually promise this land to Abraham's offspring, did he actually ensure that they would have full political control over it or rule it? And if so, would that be at the expense of other people, which would make you go against other teachings of your religion? So if we want to follow that statement to a T, well, no one can really claim full rights, because no one can 100% prove that they're a direct descendant of Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him. Now, before I finish this episode, I'm going to remind you again. Can you see this guy over here? Click on his face. Subscribe if you haven't already. Can you see this video? Have you watched it? If you have, well done. If you haven't, go ahead. What are you waiting for? You're losing. Come on, click on it.